Welcome to our channel, Gray Matters. We are two neurodivergent ladies who fixate and need to share, and we've created this channel to do just that. Check out our podcast, Fixate Today, Gone Tomorrow, for some deeper dives. Hey everyone, you are about to hear an episode of our podcast, Fixate Today, Gone Tomorrow, that we recorded with the wonderful hosts of the Leaving Eden podcast, Sadie Carpenter and Gavriel Hacohen. The Leaving Eden podcast focuses on the independent fundamental Baptist movement, cults and cult ideologies, religious deconstruction, and much, much more. Our conversation with them started as a conversation about the Duggar family, but we ended up in so many different tangents and directions. We are so incredibly grateful that Gavi and Sadie were willing to speak with us, and we had such a great time with them. Go check out the Leaving Eden podcast, and please enjoy our conversation. Welcome to Fixate Today, Gone Tomorrow. I'm Nikki, and I'm here with my Aunt Joy, and today we have two very special guests, the hosts from the Leaving Eden podcast. We have Sadie and Gavriel. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having us.
We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and we just learned that we have a fellow neurodiverse friend. And so we're, Sadie's another ADHD gal like myself. So we're just making it real spicy.
Recently diagnosed too.
This is a coming out party and celebration.
I mean, you've been talking about I think I am. Please, I need to get into the doctor for a minute.
It's been a while. I collected my first neurodivergent label a little over a year ago when I got diagnosed with OCD, and recently added ADHD.
Yeah, my diagnosis came after my son was diagnosed, and then I was like, hey, wait a minute.
That's so common. That happens to parents a lot.
Yep. So now a whole bunch of us in my family have got official diagnoses.
I actually went in to have my son tested for ADHD after I had been diagnosed with autism, and then actually he had autism too. Also, I know this is not our topic, but just my mother, Nikki's grandmother, she's 86, but she and I, when we went through the diagnosis process together, because she had spent her whole life saying I'm just not as smart as other people, and I'm not as social, and I thought it was important once I realized that's what it was. I wanted her to know there was sort of a reason behind that. So she was the oldest person that the center we went to had ever diagnosed.
That's precious.
Wow.
Yeah. My grandma's the best.
But sorry, moving on.
Moving on. Yes, the real reason we're here is we are hopping back a little bit to our Duggar series. And especially when we talked about the trial back in our series, I relied heavily on the Leaving Eden podcast and the research and just how in depth everything was. So thank you guys so much. I hope it's okay we used you.
Oh yeah, we love it.
Sure. Thank you for giving us credit.
Well, and so we just kind of wanted to, because your especially Sadie's history as the cult survivor, and then what you guys have learned over the years, and just your knowledge about the whole Duggar family and all the things. So I thought it'd be nice if we could just ask some questions about how you guys are where you are, what the podcast history with the Duggar family is, and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we first started our show, Sadie was trying to explain to me how she was raised. She's like, do you know who the Duggars are? Do you know 19 Kids and Counting? I'm like, never heard of it. Literally, I'd never heard of this.
So for me, it was one of those, it came on right, it premiered at the right time. I think it's still in high school. So it was it hit right at that time. I was watching Trading Spaces on TLC all the time. And so you'd see all the commercials. Now I realize that it became a fixation for me. And I've said since then, if somebody said, okay, we need you to go up and give a 10-minute speech about something, anything, we need you to just fill the time. I could be like, all right, you're going to learn about the Duggars.
I was watching the Duggars as a fundamentalist kid who was
Yeah, that's wild.
babysitting. Yeah, like, I was 8, still very much a fundy kid. I was babysitting other fundy kids, and the Duggars was one program that we could have on that was approved.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a couple months older than Ginger,
Okay.
but I'm right in that age range around Jessa and Ginger.
Okay.
So when you were watching, did it seem extreme to you, their way of life, or were you?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
not at all. Actually, I was so jealous of the Duggars because they were allowed to hold hands before they got married.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were allowed
Wow.
to hold hands and side hug once they were engaged, and there was none of that in the independent Baptist world that I grew up in.
Do you come from a large family?
Weirdly, I don't. So I'm the oldest of 3, me and then 2 boys, and my dad always used to say, "Well, actually, we are quiverful, it's just that our quiver was full after 3."
I really like
Basically, if
that.
God wanted him to have more kids, he
That's
should have
great.
given him more money, was what my dad said.
I love your dad. Sounds like a
Oh my
great
gosh,
kid.
he was precious. I quote him, like, every day.
That's wonderful.
Before we go too much further, do you guys want to just talk about who you are and the podcast and how you guys got started? Actually, just said on your episode today, your 5-year anniversary, I think, is coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And weirdly, today it's St. Patrick's Day that we're recording, and it was 5 years ago that COVID lockdown started. Like, this was the first day that schools were closed for us. And so
Yeah.
I found you guys right around like COVID-y times. And
Oh,
that
so
was,
you've been from like the beginning.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So
so how I remember this going down is that Sadie and I were like, friends, and we'd done some music. The theme song for our podcast is one that we recorded together because we were friends from work and we lived in the same neighborhood. And so I was like, you should come over after work one day and we'll play some music or something. We'll work on some songs. And we had a good time doing that. And we kind of came out with that song where I'd done most of the lyrics and Sadie did a lot of like the melodies and stuff and put it together on the piano. And so we ended up recording it together and we sang it together. And then we just kind of had this song. And then COVID lockdown happened. I want to say it was end of February, early March.
Mhm.
And we were bored. We were so bored.
Yep.
And we both had like recording equipment. And we were like, let's start a podcast about how you were raised in a cult.
yeah, because we're both musicians, so we both already kind of had gear lying around, and so many people over the years had said to me, "You should start a podcast and tell all of your wild stories about being raised in a cult." And it was the right time, and we had lots of nothing to do, so that's how we started our podcast, and we released it in August of 2020.
The first episodes, though, I think we recorded way back in May. I
Okay.
believe. Yeah, because I'm trying to remember how this all got started. We're not like journalists in that we don't have that like university background or any of that stuff. But my older brother is actually a professional real journalist, and he writes about basketball.
Okay.
And yeah, he covers one of the NBA teams. And so, and he's like had podcasts before. And so at the beginning I was asking him like, how do you actually like make a podcast? How do you like do this? And he was telling me basically like record a bunch of episodes before you release any of them.
I think we did the same thing because we were scared.
Yeah, so we kind of did that. And so I think we recorded like the first 5 or 6 episodes before we actually came out with any episodes.
Yep.
We had like a backlog of like 5 or 6, and that's kind of the times that it was.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder than it seems to do a podcast.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than picking up a mic and talking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So was you right from when you started? Was the focus was going to be Sadie's background with the cult, and then Gavi, did you have any like your religious background? Did that come into play, or was it just more?
A little bit, yeah. Because I was raised Jewish, but like in a pretty secular environment. So what we end up like. So I'm from Portland, Oregon, which if you ever spend time in Portland, Oregon, it's not a very religious town.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a town where there's churches on every street corner. So we thought, oh, well, how do you make good content is you take two people who have different life experiences and put them in a room together and have them talk about it. And generally, I think that that's always going to be an enduring recipe for making good content is taking two people who have different opinions and different perspectives and putting them in a room together and having them talk about it, because that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then you have a variety of topics.
Yeah, I would tell him stories about my past, and he had just not really been exposed to this kind of strict religious environment growing up in his home in Portland, Oregon. He'd never heard of anybody who saved their first kiss for marriage.
No.
Yeah.
So I would tell him stuff and he would have this great reaction because it was all new to him. And he asked questions that I would have never thought to ask myself.
Yeah, like I remember, I'm trying to think of some of the questions that like I ask and that you're like, I would have never thought to ask that. But like, I think one example of that would be like when I had to ask you, why would somebody pick a mega church over like a smaller church?
Which is very interesting because I'm in Texas. And it was,
Yeah.
and I was,
You're the mega church capital.
after I've been listening to a lot of your episodes lately, and it did make me think. I'm like, well, I don't think I know anyone from the like, especially the fundamentalist Baptist backgrounds. I'm sure we know some, but out here, it's just, I mean, almost everybody's in a mega church. I mean, and they're so mega.
Yeah, there's so many and they are so big.
Yeah. And that was interesting. And I wondered if it was more rural, like if with the IFB, did I say that right? It's IFB,
yes,
right?
yes.
Okay, I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
If it
the IFBA, that's it's pronounced IFBA.
No, it's not.
And the Duggars is Iblip.
Yes.
Iblip.
If it's more like, if you find, is it more of a rural?
It can be. It can be. You will find a lot of, like, right now I'm sorry, I started 3 sentences at once again. I'm going to try that again.
Get right in.
That is how I got diagnosed with ADHD, by the way. My psychiatrist who's treating me for the OCD heard me say, like, start 3 sentences at once too many times and said, please go get evaluated. Anyway, I'm super deep in some research right now about how other denominations of churches may have shifted to become IFB. There are a lot of small fundamentalist denominations in the United States, like Plymouth Brethren or Foot Washing Baptist or Primitive Baptist. There are, like, when the Great Awakening and the Second Great Awakening happened, there was like this huge revival in America right after the Revolutionary War. And then there was another one around the time of the Civil War. And then there was like a smaller burst of like huge revival and return to religion around World War I. And these things follow wars because people see like, oh, life is bad. A lot of people are dying. I think I'm going to go get religion.
Well, and it seems similar to kind of the religious right emerging in the 70s and 80s, post, the 60s and the free love movement, and kind of that hard swing the other way.
Yeah, very much so. So in the wake of that, especially the Second Great Awakening around the Civil War, the Southern Baptist Church split and became its own denomination as a result of the Civil War for racist reasons, unfortunately. And the Southern Baptist Convention is still, I believe, the largest Protestant denomination in the United States.
Yeah, it is. My church started as part of the Southern Baptist Convention. And the reason was our pastor used to say, like, you can't launch a church. You can't launch a Protestant church right now without some sort of help from the Southern Baptist Convention.
Yep.
And then as soon as they could, they were like, okay, we're good. Bye.
So that is a thing that happened. And another thing that happened coming into between the 1920s and the 1940s, so we're thinking the age of Prohibition, We're thinking the lead up to World War II. We're thinking rationing and women working outside the home broadly for the first time, Rosie the Riveter. Right in that era, some Baptists decided that the Southern Baptist Convention was just not conservative enough for them. And they didn't want somebody at the Southern Baptist Convention telling them what to do. And they wanted to, somehow the Southern Baptist Convention wasn't good enough friends with the Klan for them, which is
Great.
horrible. So these smaller these churches, some of them were very large and in cities, some of them were very small and rural, split off to form the loosely interconnected Independent Fundamental Baptist movement. Right now, I'm doing some research on how that intersects with older fundamentalist Baptist movements like Primitive Baptist, but I don't
Okay.
really have a conclusion yet.
Okay, that's fascinating.
A lot of the people who would remember that specifically aren't really around today to talk
Sure.
about it either. So that's the problem.
Right. This is
And a lot of this stuff is kind of like, oh, this is history of our individual church. But if that church is, closed up, then
Right.
who's going to remember church drama from 80 years ago?
right.
Yeah, exactly. Or the records for it or anything like that.
Can I ask? So, if during that time you said they were like loosely based
Yeah.
churches, have they become over time? Is there more of a coherence in doctrine and teaching? And are there certain parts of the U.S. where you see stricter
Yeah.
churches?
So to answer that question, first I have to mention that the IFB in particular don't believe in having any kind of denominational oversight or hierarchy. They believe in this concept called individual soul liberty, which means that each person is answerable to God for their own sins, their own salvation, their own mission in life from God. And that expands to churches. They believe that each church should be completely autonomous and the only person with any power in that church should be the pastor. Now, this gets abusive real fast because now this
Yeah.
can lead to pastors telling people who they can marry or what houses they can buy or what kind of car they need to drive. Pastors controlling people's finances and controlling people's personal lives. It unfortunately creates an environment that is like a perfect petri dish for abuse to grow in.
Mm-hmm.
When there is one man who has all the power and there's nobody over him to checks and balance him.
And does this work out better in some churches than others? I mean, in some,
Yeah, absolutely.
is it a healthy working environment depending on who the pastor is and then who the community is? Or
I wouldn't ever say that it is healthy, but there is definitely a range of much better to much worse. So the IFB preached this idea that there is no denomination, there's no hierarchy, nobody's in charge of anybody, but in practice they practice something called secondary separation. So separation is following the rules. You don't listen to rock music, women don't wear pants, you don't go to the movies, you don't drink, smoke, cuss. That's separation. You are different from the perceived quote unquote worldly people who do all of these evil things, right? Secondary separation is the Baptist concept of separating oneself from the people who aren't separated enough. So if your neighbor, your friend, your grandma isn't separated, isn't living by the rules, then you can't even be associated with them. It's secondary separation. And the IFB in particular will use secondary separation as a baseball bat to hit each other over the head with. And they will dissociate or reassociate with different churches depending on how many inches below the knee they let their women's skirts be, or whether they use a certain version of the Bible or not. So it's very catty. There's a lot of infighting, and who is associated with who can change a lot. The social ties between these churches are basically, if you've ever watched Bachelor in Paradise, like that's my other fixation. If you want to hear about Bachelor, that's my other thing. But people come on the island and off the island, and these two people were together and then now they're not anymore, and she's dating this other guy and he's dating this other girl. Baptist churches are kind of like that on who they associate with and who they are cool with and not cool with at any given time.
So they create an us versus them mentality, it sounds
Yeah.
like, and then that brings the us closer together at times,
Yep.
used
That
to
is
manipulate.
precisely.
And it adds that layer of isolation too.
Yep. So, and those are both elements of Dr. Stephen Hassan's bite model. When you talk about information control, us versus them mentality or good guys versus bad guys mentality is a huge contributor to information control in cults and like groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're finding that across that's across so many, especially with the politics and what's going on with our politics right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw one more question out, but do you, because I'm interested in politics, do you feel like the church and political ties, is that significant? Is that something that you've seen? Do you have any thoughts on?
Gabi, do you want to take that one? I know you've been doing research lately.
I mean, I wouldn't describe myself as I wouldn't describe. Can I swear on this podcast or not?
I say yes. My aunt says maybe.
Okay.
You know what? When you're aunt and a niece, like you feel this little sense of like parenting.
Mm.
We're 11 years apart, but still.
All right, so just go for it.
I'm not like I'm not like a single issue voter, but like one of the issues that I take very seriously is that I vote against religious dickheads being in charge of stuff, which sadly a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
As is evident, is my view. But there's a lot of, I mean, I would definitely, that's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, I would pop in to add, you talked about the Joshua generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah. The group that I was raised in was not quite as intense as the IBLP or Generation Joshua with getting into politics, but it was still definitely a focus. It was still something our churches were politically involved. I heard Mike Pence speak at a church.
Oh, wow.
Back in like 2012, I think, at a megachurch, at a Baptist megachurch. It's politics is definitely entwined into these religions, and that can go a lot of directions, and there can be a lot of reasons, but primarily the track of or the train of thought is kind of God ordained America to be a Christian country, and we're going to have this massive role in the end times in the book of Revelation when all those prophecies come true. So America is special. America is ordained by God to be somehow more special than all the other countries.
Yeah, I've been the rabbit hole I'm like obsessed with right now is the Jody Hildebrandt Ruby Franke case, and there is a book that Jody Hildebrandt, Chad Daybell of Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, and then Tim Ballard.
Oh my God.
All read, and especially with Chad and Jody, they used that specific language, and it was very heavy in their role in end times and the book of Revelation and things like that, and their responsibility to basically like set themselves up to be like the king or queen, because they're the only ones who know the truth.
Holy cow, when you say those three people in a row, wow, what a combination.
So that's where I'm like, the book is called Visions of Glory, and
I probably need to review that.
That is a nightmare blunt rotation.
Especially because if anybody isn't aware, Tim Ballard that's the guy who made the Sound of Freedom movie.
Yeah, it's right? Allegedly about him, and
and he's allegedly a bit of a perv.
Yes, yeah. The same, I think, week it was released, he stepped down from. It's called Operation Underground Railroad, which is also questionable. But he stepped down from it at the same time because all the allegations were going to come out. And it was, let's say, very inappropriate behavior with women. Shocking.
Yeah. Which never happens in cults or misogynist Christianity.
No!
Never.
Well, I want to kind of pivot to the Duggars specifically. And I guess I want to know, do you guys think that there are still fans of the Duggars?
Oh, I know there are still fans
Yeah,
of the Duggars.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That so a few months ago, Ginger came out with a book.
Yeah.
Did you read it?
No, you guys told me not to.
I read this book. So Ginger Duggar Vuolo came out with this book called People Pleaser.
Yeah, I read her first one and then I was like, I'm good.
Her first one was even more ass than her first one. This book was like straight cheeks. It was not good. But she writes this book titled People Pleaser, and it's about how to not be a people pleaser. But her thesis in the book is being a people pleaser is a sin unless you're a people pleaser for Jesus, in which case we should all be people pleasers for Jesus.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I read this whole book, and the whole book, like the way that she set it up was, she's like, this is why being a people pleaser is bad. It causes you to do XYZ thing. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. And then she gets to the chapter where she's like, and here, I'm going to tell you my secret. And she's like, the cure to being a people pleaser is to be a people pleaser, but for Jesus. And I tell you, I got the audiobook and I tried to get my money back for the audiobook, but they wouldn't let me get my money back for the audiobook. So I had to go on the Amazon reviews of this book and had to tell everybody that this book was legit terrible. And when I was on there was quite a few people on there who were just like, I've been following Ginger since she was on TLC, and I just love the Duggars, and I'm so happy that she's, doing blah, 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 blah now. And she's so free and her life is so good. And I'm just so happy to see what people's life is like outside. I'm just like, you don't know, do you?
That's my question. Like, do they not know, or are they heads in the sand, or do they not care?
I think that what it is they're just like, well, the things they believe about the world and about other people and about who's going to heaven and who's going to hell, that's not wrong. What's wrong is that they're not allowed to wear pants.
Right.
So she believes not all the same stuff, because she has slightly different theological beliefs now. She's a Calvinist.
Yeah.
And she wears pants now. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
Is they're like, well, that's good enough for me that she's not IBLP anymore. IBLP seems crazy, and she's gotten out to some degree.
I have to
Yeah.
I have to say I bought the first book because this was more Nikki's obsession. And so I was trying to get up to speed. So I bought the first book, an audiobook also. And I'm
it was so
weirdly
bad.
autistic, so I sleep with my headphones on, and then I listen to something as I'm falling to sleep. I couldn't even continue to listen to it.
Oh, wow.
Asleep. When they got to like how to style one's hair, I'm like, I
can't do it.
I'm out. I can't do it anymore.
Which book was that? Was that Growing Up Duggar?
Yeah, I think.
I didn't read that one. We read Becoming Free Indeed.
Yeah, this was
Free
Ginger's
Indeed.
like she doesn't call it she calls it disentangling from.
Yeah, it's her theological or spiritual memoir, which she's like, yep, I'm done. This is where I ended up. And then she's like, now I'm putting out a Christian self-help book, which was not good. Terrible.
See, I was raised with all of that about you have a square face and you're a winter, and this is how you should style your hair in order to get a man. And it's
That's so interesting.
Like, my little party trick is I can put a book on my head and pick up a quarter off the floor without dropping the book off my head. There's a video of me on my Instagram and TikTok doing this if you go back a couple of years.
Listen, I have a lot to do tonight after we're done here, but I think I'm going to spend the evening trying to do that.
It's all in the knees. But I was raised with that very super traditional, be a lady and all that stuff. So I think a lot of my experience overlaps with the Duggars. We read a lot of the same books and listened to a lot of the same people. You were asking about who are still fans of the Duggars.
Yeah.
Some people are. And I think they fall into different categories because there are going to be those people who are in like conservative Christian churches, but not like IFB,
Right.
like Southern Baptist or conservative non-denominational, Bethel, Hillsong, whatever. The ones that they look a lot more hip on the outside, but their beliefs are still pretty toxic
The
inside, stuff
mega
like that.
churches in Texas.
Yeah.
And people like that may feel like they're getting something out of Ginger's book.
Mm-hmm.
Or do they feel like they're superior? I mean,
I
just
think in
throwing
the
that out
past
there.
they felt like they were superior, and now they feel like she's grown to their level. Like,
Okay,
look at
okay.
this little girl, she's grown up enough to teach me something about being a people pleaser for Jesus. And that's just like
Yeah.
my guess. But I think, in a way, I'd rather them read people pleaser than toxic empathy.
Yeah.
Like,
Although, did you see that Jeremy and Ginger had Ellie Beth Stuckey on their?
Yeah.
I saw that because Eric Skwarczynski sent me a clip of it, and I was just like, ugh.
It's one of those things that, like, if I'm scrolling through like the Facebook reels, I'll have something like that pop up, and that's where I saw it and was like, oh no.
yeah.
See, for me, I feel like with Allie Beth Stuckey, whenever I see her speaking, if you put her on mute, what she looks like is she's like in the house and somebody's dog pooped and she's trying to figure out where the poop is. And that's the look this
She
like, cause
does
she
kind
always
of
is
have
like,
that look, yeah.
it's like, where is it? Where is it? Over here? Is it over here? I got a whiff of something, and I don't really like the thing that I got a whiff of.
But all that to say, like, just like Allie Beth has fans, the Duggars still have, they still have fans.
Yeah.
And there are,
Does Allie Beth have fans or does she have simps?
I don't know.
Like who are her
Bethany
fans? Are her
Beal.
fans women or her fans dudes that are like, I wish she was my trad wife?
No, I bet Bethany Beal watches her show.
Oh, but Bethany.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
been a while since we said Bethany Beal. I feel like I need to look in the mirror 3 times, see what she's up to.
Joy, these are all Christian influencers.
Yeah, you lost me here.
Bethany Beal is man. I tried like a year ago or something. We did an episode where I was like, maybe let's be nice to Bethany Beal. And then now I'm just like, if I see something by Bethany Beal, I'm
Yep.
I'm thinking mean things about her in my head. I have very little room left for being nice to Bethany Beal because I think that
There you go. Fair.
she's awful and she doesn't deserve
Well,
it.
I'll have to catch up on her while you're doing your quarter trick tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much to catch up
There's
on.
a lot.
I'd recommend Jen from Fundy Fridays.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
But just like those people have fans, the Duggars do, and then there are all the it's a train wreck and I can't look away watchers.
That's me.
And
yeah.
that's fine. That's a fine thing to be. I think what we try to do in Leaving Eden is provide context for the people. It's fine to want to watch a train wreck and not be able to look away. That's human. There's nothing wrong with you. But we try to provide just a little bit deeper context so people can understand why are these people behaving in these wacky ways? What is going on here? When it looks harmless, how do we know what's actually harmful? Like, that's a lot of what we do when we talk about the Duggars.
Yeah, and then it comes to where you want to put your money also. So I work at a library, so I borrowed Ginger's book, but made the decision to buy Jill's book. And it's like, there's that nuance of like, even though some of these people have a lot of money, you're still deciding how to support them if you're purchasing something from them, or and so having the context is super helpful in kind of making those decisions.
Well, did Ginger sign the lifetime Sea Org contract with Jim Bob's Bad Family Inc.?
Oh, I think she probably
That's-
did, right?
Yeah, because in Jill's book, Jill talks about how Jim Bob tried to get her to sign a lifetime contract for like in perpetuity for her and her kids and her kids' kids and
Yeah.
for, any progeny that she and her husband Derek produce will be a lifetime of servitude with Mad Family Inc., which is Jim Bob's company.
No, sorry. That just strikes me as crazy. I mean, as to have your adult kids be that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Where he would like basically take all of their income that they make off of their own name and then pay them like one time a payment of some, I don't know how it works. But Jill put that contract in their book. And I assume that Ginger signed it because I think that in order to be part of the Duggarverse still, to like be still within like in good standing with that family, you have to sign it.
And I would, this is just me speculating, but there's also the, Ginger had an easier time switching to pants. And I wonder if there's some of that related, that she agreed to sign the document. And so it wasn't as big of a deal for her. Whereas Jill is rebellious and
Yeah, I think what you're implying is that Jim Bob could have made it easier on Ginger and made it harder on Jill.
yeah.
And I have absolutely no argument against that, but I wanted to point out the other side of that coin, if I may.
Yeah.
Because if Ginger feels like she is being a good girl and pleasing her parents, then going against them and wearing pants, even though that disappoints them, is not going to make her feel as guilty.
Yeah.
And if Jill is feeling like she is a guilty person and a bad person and rebellious, then her choosing to wear pants is going to make her feel even worse about herself. So, whether or not there was pressure coming from Jim Bob, the effect is the same because of the misogyny, the taught in people pleasing, and the way that fundamentalist children are taught very specifically to have no self-esteem.
Yeah. I just read, I'm looking up, okay. I just read Rift by Kate West.
I have heard that is so good. I haven't read it yet.
It was really, really good. And it brought up the term that I think is kind of obvious when you're talking about groups like this, but I've never heard a term put to it, that she called it stay-at-home daughter.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that just like blew my mind. I was like, that's what is happening. That's what this control is you stay in your father's home until you marry the godly man that your father's probably chosen or at least vetted.
Yeah.
And it almost creates like the cult of family, or cult of, your family as a unit within a church.
Yeah, and it can kind of lead to like Russian nesting dolls cults.
Right.
Because let's say, the father is very controlling and effectively running a cult within his own little patriarchal family. Well, then that family may be placed inside a church that also operates as a cult with the pastor at the head.
Right.
And that church may also be within a movement like the Independent Fundamental Baptist movement that also has elements of cult-like control coming from the top.
Right. I do recommend that book. It was very good. It was tough, as any book like that is, but very good. I know kind of the answer just because I listened to the podcast, but I am so curious about how you guys feel about Anna Duggar today.
I think my opinion on her has not changed too much from, I don't know, let's say like a year or two ago. Maybe not at the time of the trial.
Mm-hmm.
At the time of the trial is probably the most animosity that I felt towards her. And part of that was that she, when the Josh Duggar trial went down, I was recording episodes holding my little baby was like 8 or 9 months old.
Yeah.
When this trial was going down. So she's just that much older than Josh and Anna's youngest kid, Madison, which is a whole different story. But I was writing these episodes and reading about the absolute depravity of what was found on his computer while bouncing an 8-month-old on my knee. Like that. And I was like very physically, like when a baby's that little, you're so physically involved with caring for them. They're always in your arms or holding on to you or in a carrier. and like being in physical contact with my daughter and reading and doing the research for those episodes on the trial really was hard, looking at Anna with a newborn in her arms, or Anna being pregnant, I think at the time that he was arrested.
Yeah, I think so.
That was hard to see, and I think every layer that I deconstruct for myself of my own, like, my life is still these constant revelations of, "Oh my god, I was really not raised to be a human person. I was
Mhm.
treated as subhuman my whole life." And realizing that, processing that, finding how it's affected me as an adult, working on implementing ways to heal from that so I'm not stuck there forever. I think with each of those cycles of realization and healing for me, I maybe get a little bit more sympathetic towards Anna, and
Mhm.
am reminded of my sympathy towards her, and then every moment that I'm with my little one, I am reminded of my animosity towards her. So I think that I kind of have found that zen in the middle of those two things.
Yeah, that's really how I feel too, that uh, I mean, women in this religion or group or whatever are raised a very specific way, but it's your responsibility as a parent to do the right thing. And
Yeah,
that's,
I think any view of Anna that isn't both and is just
yeah.
terribly lacking. If you just hate her and believe she's an enabler and she put her kids in danger without recognizing the years and years of grooming and abuse, literally her entire life, and the
Yeah.
misogynistic culture that she was raised in, and like the beliefs that she was taught to have about herself. Little fundamentalist kids are taught that you're a worm. Your God sees you as the rags that people with leprosy use to wipe off their open sores. That's how God
Mhm.
sees you. You are nothing. So when I think to blame her and hate her without recognizing what she has gone through is totally wrong. And I think to write her a free pass for endangering her children because of what she has gone through is also totally wrong. I think
Yeah.
there's just no answer other than both and.
My thought, though, is that during the trial, I remember reading one of the accounts of the trial said that at one point, because the members of the jury were given like computer monitors that
Mhm.
had the images that Josh was looking up, that the images that he was accessing on his computer with the Linux partition and the Tor browser. And
Mhm.
somebody, one of the articles wrote that at one point one of the monitors was pointed in a way that Anna could see it, and that she literally had no reaction to it.
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember, and that detail just sticks with me because when we were doing research for those episodes, I read some shit that I cannot unread.
Yeah.
That was like the stuff that he was accessing was, there's some stuff in there that I cannot like get those words out, like if I could go in and just like do delete on having read that sentence, I would do that.
Yeah.
And he was just like, you know, that was like put in front of her. It's like, this is what your husband likes. Nothing.
Yeah. And you haven't taken steps to do anything to
No.
protect these kids.
Now, at this point, though, logistically, does she have a lot of options? She's kind of stuck, right? In a
Right. I mean, she's dependent on Jim Bob for money, in that I mean, I assume that she's dependent on Jim Bob for money. And so, you know, if she, as long as she goes along with whatever it is that Jim Bob wants, then he'll keep, you know, these kids supported.
Yeah,
And really, what skills does she have outside of being Josh's wife and being somebody who was reality TV
Mhm.
famous 10 years ago, 15 years ago? I
yeah.
don't know.
I think the answer to this one also has to be both and. Like when we were doing our episodes on the trial, we did some donations to was it Children's Safety Center?
Yeah, it was. There was a children's say something like that. It was based in Arkansas. It was a nonprofit based in Arkansas.
Yeah, there's a nonprofit that cares for children, and a lot of what they do is children who were victims of trafficking or abuse. And they do forensic investigations, they do on the ground support, you know, the literal necessities of life. They do therapy and counseling. So, and that puts it into perspective that there are these services in the community that Anna could access, and she doesn't.
Yeah. And she's had a lot of people outside of.
Her brother Daniel, right?
Right, right. And even, I mean, say what you will, but Amy Duggar has reached out consistently, irritatingly sometimes, but it still has. And there are people in her orbit that she could bring some of this to.
And
Amy
she has,
Duggar is about the bag.
Yeah.
She is a clout chaser.
I don't know if you guys know the podcast Digging Up the Duggars. They do like a recap.
yeah, I do.
Familiar.
They recap but they call her Famey.
I've seen that one online. So there are resources that Anna could access. There are food stamps. There is Section 8 housing. There are resources out there for single mothers. There is public school. So it's the both and thing again for me, because there are all these resources that she could access, and she has never learned to be her own person. She has been told that she is scum and dirt and a worm from the time she was a little baby, and she's never had therapy to deal with that. She likely faced some sort of abuse in her marriage with Josh Duggar, and I say that because we know of him being physically and verbally violent to other people.
Yeah.
So it is likely that she may have faced that as well.
You know what small moment in the show has always stuck with me is their wedding, when they were going into the hotel and he's like steaming straight ahead and she's got the luggage.
Yeah, she's pulling the suitcase. There's that one, and there's a joke. I think it is during her first pregnancy when they go to see the doctor, like the OB. And the doctor asks something about, are you taking your prenatal vitamins? And Josh goes, yeah, she's great at swallowing.
Oh, God.
Yeah, like gross as that is, but also to make that joke about your wife who's pregnant with your first child on national TV on a show. Like there's good reason to think that she probably faced abuse in that relationship, as best as we could, anybody who wasn't in the relationship could guess. And she is disadvantaged even when it comes to taking advantage of those great programs that could help her. She is already behind so far in life. So that's, once again, like it's always going to be both and for me. Of yes, she's responsible. Yes, she's failing her children. And yes, there are some valid reasons that she is failing right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of, I think that's where we kind of landed also by the end is she, I think it's easier to have your head in the sand, but that doesn't make it right. It's easier to lean into my husband was framed and this is all a big mistake than accept what the reality is of something that horrific.
And if we expand that to other women who are facing abusive situations, it's misogynist to say that women are helpless victims who cannot stand up for themselves or fight their way out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
It's also misogynist not to recognize that women are systemically disadvantaged, and women of color even more so, and queer women even more so. But all the layers of intersectionality that a person may have put them steps further behind the starting line. I think both of those are errors when you portray women as either helpless or portray it as if they have no challenges.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that we treat Anna Duggar is really indicative it says a lot about a person's feminism and their own beliefs. And that's why this is a topic that I'm super passionate about and will always talk about.
Yeah.
Sadie, can I ask you, with your background, just talking educationally,
Yeah.
first of all, did you attend public or school, or were you homeschooled?
No, I attended Christian private school. In the schools that I went to, we used the same curriculum that the Duggars used. So you'll see them using a curriculum called ACE, which is Accelerated Christian Education. It's a Christian curriculum specifically meant to teach children to be office workers. So children sit in little cubicles and fill out paperwork all day. And there's no teacher. You teach yourself from books. And the books have wacky things to say, like when the school book says that the Loch Ness Monster is real and it's a dinosaur left over from Noah's flood and it's proof of young Earth creationism.
I always wonder how it keeps is he having babies? How does it Loch Ness?
Yeah, there's a whole
generation.
I think there's like a whole clan of them down there.
Well, no, because if it's from before the time of Noah's flood, that's like before the DNA got corrupted. So that's why people lived like 1,000 years in the book of Genesis and stuff. So the Loch Ness Monster is from that era. So it lives a long time.
It doesn't age.
So I was educated mostly from ACE and then later from Abeka, which is just a little bit better than ACE. There is some real science mixed in with all the bad science in Abeka. Then I went to Bible college at Hyles-Anderson College, which is none of the Duggars have gone to Hyles-Anderson, but you can kind of draw sideways connections. Another really famous fundie, Jill Rodriguez, her sister went to Hyles-Anderson.
Love J-Rod.
Love J-Rod.
Backwards connect that to the Duggars because now J-Rod's daughter Marie is married to Nathan, who is Anna Duggar's younger brother. So there are definitely connections between the Duggars and Hyles-Anderson. They've been seen with prominent Hyles-Anderson graduates. People who speak at IBLP conferences will often also speak in chapel at Hyles-Anderson, like I think David Gibbs recently spoke in both of those meetings. The Duggars are not directly connected to Hyles-Anderson, but there are a lot of looser ties. There are a lot of ways you can put these people in the same world. I went there at Hyles-Anderson. There were 4 options for what you could do. So what you could do as a woman, you could be a pastor's wife, an assistant pastor's wife, a missionary's wife, or a teacher. So I went to college to be a teacher because that was the only one that wasn't wife. And took lovely classes like preparing for marriage where they teach you how to be submissive to your husband at all times. That's a real college class that I took.
What was your favorite thing you learned in that class? Okay, is there anything that you learned in that class you're like, actually, that was a piece of good advice?
No.
Yeah, I need some pointers. Any pointers?
I have my notes from that class. I'll send you my notes because I still have my notes.
Wow.
So like I didn't feel like I got a lot of education out of being there. I was there for 2 years and then I almost got kicked out over a side hug, but that's another story.
I was just listening to that while I was upstairs vacuuming, by the way.
Yeah. So I didn't feel like I got a lot of education out of that. And then in my life since then, none of those credits have meant anything to me. Like those credits are unaccredited and they're basically trash.
I was going to ask that with how that would work with the unaccredited university.
Yeah. So no, that nothing. So I was very fortunate, believe it or not, in the IFB. I got educated, I think, very well for a girl or an AFAB person. My dad taught me a lot of Latin and Greek. And so usually women were not encouraged to translate scripture, but fortunately my dad, the mega feminist, thought it was probably okay for women to translate scripture. And so I learned Latin and Greek from my dad. I got all the way through a 12th grade education. and did not graduate with a GED. I graduated with a high school diploma,
Wow.
which is a lot better than a lot of fundamentalist kids
Yeah,
get.
yeah.
Do fundamentalist boys, do they have options to receive better education, or is it kind of the same?
It's yes, but only in certain areas. So things like civics, government, and scripture and dead languages.
So how are they what's the thought on how they're going to support a family one day?
God will provide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
But they will make sure that they have that civics degree for when they have to enter politics
Right.
to take over the country.
Yeah. So the whole thing is very much like God will take care of you. You don't need money. Which is
Okay.
if I'm gonna get off on the misogyny aspect of it, which is also a misogynistic thing, because who do you think is actually providing for the family? Is it the pastor husband who's bringing home mediocre to meager offerings every week? Or is it the person actually supporting the family, the wife, who can feed a family of 7 for a week on $25 and can patch and repair all of their clothes and make them little curtain dresses like in The Sound of Music?
Yep.
Who is actually supporting this family? Is it God or the husband, or is it the wife?
I think that all the time, especially since we've been talking about Micah Miller, is it seemed like her role was almost to like make sure her pastor husband was exalted, and she just had to like do all the things to make sure that he felt like he's the head pastor of this church. And
Yeah, ego management.
yeah,
That's what I took college classes for.
They really had ego management in your college classes?
What do you think the class preparing for marriage was about?
Or that
It's how to make your husband feel like a big shot so he can go win the souls to the Lord.
Well, the wife is at home actually doing everything.
Yeah.
Conversations like these make me really thankful for my church.
Yeah. See, that's something that I feel really privileged to do, because we have friends in the deconstructing podcast space who are doing like, I have left religion and now consider myself an atheist. And I think that is super fine for if that's where people need to be, that is good for them. But a lot of people don't let go of faith for a lot of reasons. Sometimes great reasons, sometimes reasons that I maybe wouldn't think are so great. But a lot of people hold on to faith. And I think where I see myself is being that bridge between people of faith who are not hateful to other people of faith who would never support abuse in churches and are happy to learn about actual recommendations for preventing it from happening in the first place. Like, there are so many people of faith that are totally in the right place and totally good-hearted, and I can kind of be that bridge in deconstruction content for those people.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it could be seen as like you're not completely deconstructing if you're not an atheist or a non-believer. And that's, not the case. My pastor always calls me like the feminist. Like, yeah, and you keep me around.
that tells me you've got the right relationship there.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of separate from the podcast. I'm doing some work, and I'm just trying to put together some information about coercive control that our pastors have been like very willing to hear.
Yeah.
And just like coercive control in church situations and kind of what the man's job is.
Yeah.
As
because where I come down on that is churches are unfortunately just a great environment for abuse to grow. It doesn't mean like, I think I said earlier, a petri dish. Just because a petri dish is a great place for bacteria to grow doesn't mean that the petri dish is wrong or bad. It just means it has characteristics that bacteria like. And churches have characteristics that abuse and abusers like. But if you wanted to not grow bacteria in your petri dish, there are things you can do to prevent it, right? You cannot put bacteria in there. You can keep it covered. You can use bleach to sanitize the area. And just like that, we can do things within churches to make abuse way less likely.
Mm-hmm.
There are just common sense policies that actually work to create healthy environments in church. It is absolutely possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are either of you religiously active then currently? I mean, Sadie, after you left the church, are you still active in religion? Do you still
I
attend?
am really happy where I am right now. So after I left the IFB, I went through a phase of not engaging with religion at all. I was very, very angry. And I felt like God and religion had hurt me so badly. I didn't want anything to do with them. And I validate that past version of me. I needed the break. I don't apologize for it. I don't feel ashamed of it at all. Then I went through a phase of re exploring religion and finding a lot of different practices that are different from the ones that I grew up with. I went to Catholic Mass religiously for a while. And where I've gotten to as me being 32 now, I feel really happy and whole with one foot in and one foot out of religion. So you will often hear me say things like, "Well, if there is a God, then this, that, and the other." I I feel at peace with myself and at peace with whoever may be up there when I engage with religion and science at the same time, when I engage with religion and logic at the same time, and when I leave space for there to be a God while not completely restricting myself to just one way of looking at them. I lean back and forth between those two spaces a lot. But I really truly believe that if there is a God, and I think I will always think there is, um, if there is a God, then they are just and they are all knowing. So if there is a God, then they can see the true intentions of my heart. And I don't mean that in a wishy-washy way, like, oh well, I tried to be a good person. I mean that in a very serious and literal way, that if there is a God who is truly just, then they can truly judge everything I do and my true intentions. They can understand them in a way that I can't even. And
Yeah.
so I can't go prove that there's a God or prove that there isn't a God. I can't go prove that the Bible is the word of God. A lot of people are out there trying to do that. I don't think that's my calling. I think what my calling is to try to connect with other humans as best as I can. I've sometimes called myself a Christian humanist. Live my life in a way that I'm satisfied with. Live my life in a way that I believe my intentions are pure, and continue learning about religion and God. At this point I hope I'm never sure. I've grown
That's how I feel too. That's a great
I've
way to put
grown
it.
to really enjoy and feel at peace in the uncertainty.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, faith is the belief in the things unseen, but I think it's also being willing to ask questions, not necessarily question everything, but ask questions and sometimes be satisfied or okay with not getting an answer now or yet.
I think that's why I will so often say Christian humanist, because to me that uncertainty and being willing to accept I don't know as an answer is so human.
Yeah.
That is like inherently a human thing. That is something that makes humanity special and makes humanity interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think combining that with faith is really where I feel most at home.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I can accept that this is a mystery. I can accept that I personally feel like there is a God, but I don't really know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
I have, some evidence that makes me feel like there is a God, but I don't know who they are, or I can't tell you what they think. I can't tell you who they hate.
Yeah.
I think it's very freeing to let yourself live in the mystery a little bit.
Gavi, are you practicing the Jewish faith? Are you active?
I'm still Jewish.
Oh, was I
Still
wrong?
Jewish.
Oh,
No,
No?
he's being funny.
oh.
You still just, yeah.
So, no, I'll be getting text about how much it sucks to not eat bread in a couple weeks here when Passover happens. Yep.
So you're Jewish in the same way I'm Catholic. I mean, it's in my heart, and I'll always call myself. Wait, so hold on real quick. You literally are of the Jewish faith, right? Like, am I just totally wrong on this?
Yes.
Okay. Like, maybe
I mean, you're also like,
Yes.
also part of it is also like an ethnic thing.
Mhm.
So
There's part of you that'll always
there's
be
that
connected,
element to it. Yeah.
but it's not. Okay.
Yeah.
And has your relationship or learning from Sadie influenced that at all, or changed your ideas about faith?
A little bit, maybe. I don't know. I mean, just because Christianity focuses so heavily on faith and we don't focus on faith because it's not really that's not really a
Mhm.
for us in the same way. It's that it's more of like, this is what we do, not this is what we believe.
And I think I've learned a lot about decentering Christianity because I will say something that I just believe is true about religion in general, and Gavi will be like, "Wait, what?" No, and then I
Yeah.
realize, oh, that's not a religious thing, that's a Christian thing.
Yeah.
And I've been raised in this Christian society and super deep in Christian evangelicalism, and I need to expand my worldview a little bit to understand that that's not universal to everyone who has a faith or a belief system. So that's really, really, really helpful for me.
Yeah. No, I'm in an interesting spot because I was raised Catholic. My mom, who is Joy's sister, said once I got to confirmation, I'm an adult in the church and I can make the decision if I go to church. And I was like, I don't go to church. and so I came kind of back. Well, I don't think I ever, but I came to faith as an adult with my husband and like this completely different church atmosphere that was like,
Yeah.
oh, we don't have to do like service. It doesn't have to be exactly the same every week. And the ritual of it kind of became more encompassing than the, I guess, fruit of going to church. And
Yeah.
it was like, I
Which
have to
is
do this
so
thing.
funny because the ritual is really soothing to me
Yeah.
because I was raised in church where people yell and throw things.
Right.
So to me, knowing that it's going to be the same every time is really comforting. And I think when we get into these deeper conversations about faith, that's where we can start to find common ground. It's, oh,
Yeah.
you found something that works for you. And I've I tried more black and white thinking and that didn't work for me, but hey, living in the unknown and being okay with not knowing is working for me, and I feel more right. I feel more on track than I have in a long time.
Yeah.
And we can encourage people to find what works for them, not just in the sense of what makes you feel good, but in the sense of what makes you a better person. What makes you feel like you're treating other people the way that you ought to be.
Yeah. What makes you think you're a source of good in the world and the
Yeah,
community
and are you satisfied with your own life?
yeah.
Are you satisfied with your own behavior? That's my, that's my, another special interest for me. It's like that there's a weird little tiny space between religion and psychology, and I like to get all into that space.
I can understand the comfort thing, though. I mean,
Oh no.
I am not religious really at all. We did attend church when I was young and we're Catholic, but I do find the ritual part of it comforting. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know anything about the whole Micah J.P. Miller case, but I met JP and I went to church there, and I don't think I've ever been to like a
Wow.
non-denominational, I keep calling it mass, but I guess service, and it felt so strange to me. It's the part where you're like, okay, and it's over. That was the way a Catholic match like crescendos and then like you kind of ease out of it. But yeah, I thought that was one of the craziest things is okay, it's done. What do you we just mill about?
Yeah, she texted me and was like, "Oh, they just end."
And I'll say one more thing, just a different topic though. With as I think I have kids that are grown. I'm older than you all, but and I've always with our kids, I've always introduced them to church, and like with the Catholic religion, they've always kind of gone through like their first communion, and the idea being if church does give them comfort or guidance, I fully support them going that route. But one thing we've found is, I mean, without being a braggy mom, we do have very kind, very moral children who have taken the right path and do good things. And they often are friends, or, even dating wise with a lot of religious kids. Because they kind of have that same sense of moral value, and it's actually been like I have a oldest is 26. It's been a major part of him dating and trying to find the right person, because yeah, I mean, they're attracted to each other because of their morals and values, but then there's a point where you're getting more serious, and then that religious aspect, you're not going to ever fully agree on that, or agree how you want to raise your kids. And I've had him, yeah, that he's had several relationships where other than they have wonderful, everything else is good, but they just realize they're never going to agree on that. It's
They can't reconcile that.
no. I mean, and he always
Yeah.
breaks up with them, and they're always happy, like they're always friends, and realize, but it's time to go their separate ways when you get to that point in life, and you realize, okay, can we make it together or not? So
Well, the kids aren't religious anymore. I don't know if you saw this, but for the first time ever, young men are more religious than young women.
is it?
Yeah. That's concerning to me, however. For I am afraid it's kind of it. I'm concerned that it's going hand in hand with kind of like the red pilling, the masculinity.
I mean, it is.
Yeah,
that's the thing, is that, I mean, like Sadie was saying with the Great Awakening, coming after wars, people come to, like, after a crazy traumatic event like COVID.
Yeah.
Where are people going with it? I've been reading a lot about this, and I think that a lot of the culture war that's going on between religious and non-religious, people, the right and the not right, is to do with young men being angry that women don't want to have sex with them.
Yeah. I mean,
I do too.
And,
what
and
a
that it's like,
strange, what a strange obsession that it seems like a lot.
I just watched this show on
religions
Netflix yesterday. It's 4 episodes. I watched it all day yesterday, called Adolescence. And it is about that. It is a 13-year-old boy is accused of murdering a girl who's a classmate. And it was so good. But
should I check it out?
I think so.
So, because the thing that is kind of going on now in like culture, I think, is that it's not men competing with other men to try and attract women. It's men competing with a cat in a good book, which you can't fucking do unless you're a good person, and you're a legit person. And these guys are like, but I don't want to be a good person. I want
to do what I want to do, and you still have to like me because you have to get married.
Yeah.
And have sex with me.
And women are just like, maybe not. I'd rather stay single and happy. And and all these men are like, no, I need to go to church to find myself a teenage bride.
So my son is almost 13. He'll be 13 in a couple of weeks. And my husband and I we have with our other 2 kids as well, like talked about consent and all those things. But with our son, been very much like, you have a huge responsibility to be a good man. And this is what that looks like. And one of like my proudest parenting moments with him is he brought a long sleeve shirt to school to keep in his locker. And I was like, what are you doing? He hates long sleeves. He hates pants. He's wearing shorts in negative 20-degree weather where we live. And he's bringing a long sleeve shirt. And I said, what's that for? And he said, well, I remembered that my older sibling got their period around this age. So I thought if any of my friends who are girls like had their period and needed to tie a shirt around their stomach, I could just have one.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And I was like,
Yeah.
but it has been
That's sweet.
it's been hard to raise a good boy, raise a good man.
Do you see, because if you've got kids that age,
Yeah.
do you see their friends being like, are you trying to sniff out which ones of them like Andrew Tate?
Yep, absolutely. And
you talk to other moms about it, like,
you know, I do to the moms that I'm friends with, which then inherently is like they have similar ideals and values as me. So it's really the I'm seeing it more with actually my oldest. My oldest is 14, and they are experimenting, exploring with gender and sexuality, and we're using they them pronouns and things like that. And the rhetoric and the things that they have had to deal with this year have been next level.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
And so that's where I'm seeing it more. My son is pretty good about being like, this kid said this and it's so dumb, and I told him to stop, and like letting it roll off his back. But my oldest is very, they're in it right now. And their school psychologist said that, you know, since the beginning of this school year, and it ramped up around November, the bullying for anybody who is not straight, white, whatever, has been a lot, has been more than they've seen before.
That's crazy.
I have my daughter. I have a very gentle, very sweet daughter who had never dated. She's 22 now, and she went to actually a very conservative Catholic school in Texas. Oddly enough, not because we are at all. It just ended up being where she went to school. And she, we always kind of laugh, sent her off to this school, and she came back with a girlfriend. But
that's cute.
It is. And
they're so cute.
They're adorable. They're the cutest couple. And they actually are married because of a lot of reasons with
before political stuff comes down harder.
Yeah. So they are, but they're not really touchy, outwardly physical people. But we've been looking at wedding venues, and they had their first one that denied them because they were same sex. And honestly, never even entered our mind that would be an issue. And they did write
crazy.
back. I mean, not a mean email, but saying we, and especially my Andrea, my daughter-in-law, she's come from a very a Catholic, very strict conservative background, and they explained they went to school, and they've never. That was the first time that they have ever had just such blatant discrimination. And honestly,
that's
took
crazy.
them a little off guard.
I mean, I'm planning a wedding right now too, but that's like, and that's just like something that didn't even enter my mind that could happen. But I'm planning a straight wedding, so
well,
that's.
And the irony is that the place that they were looking at kind of had a beautiful chapel of sorts. The thing is, they're already actually legally married, and we had thought about that because it did have a chapel, and my daughter-in-law does come from such a religious background that it was almost, they felt like it was best not to use the chapel, just because that, I don't know, it was kind of a weird feeling. And yeah, that was when they got their letter. It was like, it was a lot about using this chapel and, how they look at it as a religious place. And when they wrote back their letter, they're like, irony was we weren't going to use it.
I mean, so the letter, what did it say? I'm sorry, we are sorry to inform you that
Mhm.
like how did they phrase it? Were they just like it just your same sex union goes against our religious beliefs, or what was it? How was it like?
Yep. Well, first of all, it was a lot of like delaying. I mean, they were writing to say, okay, we want to go with this venue. What's the next step? And then they kept not getting an answer back, which just seemed, we thought they were just
Were they just trying
disorganized.
to like say, "Oh, sorry, we booked somebody else on that date"? That's
Yeah,
probably
but
the
they didn't. No, they came out and actually the person,
damn.
I mean, I think there's the person who had to write the letter was not the one who felt this way. So you could see that it was a difficult thing for her to put together, because I think it's the first time it's come up. And
Man, I'd
they
quit. If
focused
I
on
worked there, I'd quit.
they focused on the chapel being consecrated, and then that just not being part of their beliefs. And they tried to make it kind. But yeah, it was kind of shocking. So,
You can't really be kind with that. That's not really kindness.
Yeah, your
That's
existence is invalid. There's just no nice way to say it.
and they're just the sweet, I don't know, like Nikki could tell you that they're just the sweetest, kindest. They just love each other to love each other. I mean, you know what I mean? They just out of two people in this world who just it has nothing to do with sexuality. They just love each other. They just found the right person. And it's so hard for I think our next generation is starting to learn that just love is just love. But anyways.
Well, and the thing that will slow that down is kind of what I was saying. The atmosphere we're in now, with a lot of these kids are hearing these things at home, and then feeling emboldened enough to bring that out into the public.
Yeah.
And so it's like this fine balance of I am working really, really hard to raise these really like accepting, kind people that I'm responsible for, and I have to fight against the parents who are not doing that.
Yeah, and I'm just trying. I'm like 10 years behind you. If your oldest is 14, my baby just turned 4. So I'm just not that far behind you, trying to do the same thing that you're trying to do. My Chuck, the other day we were driving to school, which is a great time to ask super complicated questions.
Yes.
She asked me a question about when she grew in my uterus, because she knows she grew in my uterus, and I, gave her the answer. She asked how babies get out, and I gave her the answer. And then she didn't ask how they get in, which was nice, because if she asks, I'm going to tell her. So
Yep.
I was glad that she didn't. I was not quite ready to have that conversation.
You should have a little more time on that one.
I had told her, yeah, she was not quite 4 yet at the time this happened. But in that conversation, I had told her that people with uteruses are people who can grow babies. And often when somebody is born and the doctor says it's a girl, what the doctor means is this person has a uterus. And usually those things go together, but not always. And I'm lucky to have adults in her life where I can say, oh, well, River has a uterus, but River's not a boy or a girl. Your friend Trevor has a uterus, but he's a boy. Like, so I have actual adults in her life that I can point to and say, well, often people with uteruses are girls, but not always. And be able to show her that, and to have couples that are not a straight man and a straight woman in her life where I can have that illustrative. Oh, well, so and so and so and so. They're both girls,
And
and
it's
they
just
love each other.
it kind of going back to the Duggars, it just shows the importance of community and external influences, and why not being insulated matters.
Yeah, because it's so much easier to explain when there's a real life lesbian couple in her life who I think are great. I think they're good role models for my kid. And I can just say, oh, like Betty and Susie. It's a lot easier. So the end of that conversation was Chuck asked me, she said, well, am I a girl? And I said, well, I don't know, baby. You might be, but you're going to have to tell me. And she goes, no, you tell me. She was very indignant about that.
She's like, I understand. I don't like making decisions either.
with my daughter, I always, because she hadn't dated till late in life, I'm always like, do you have a crush on, any boys or girls? And so we always, and then she usually was like, no, 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 till finally it was yes. But with I have my boys, I always like, okay, do you have a crush on any boy or girl? And they're like, Mom, no. Just like, you can stick with the boy for me. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Do you have any crush on a girl or a boy? And yeah, he was like, you don't have to keep saying that. I'm good. I'm good. It's great.
Like,
it's gonna be good.
It's really nice. It's honestly nice to hear that, like, as a mom of a little one, because that's the same conversations I'm having with my kid now. And it's really, really sweet to hear you saying, oh, I was having these conversations with my kids 20 years ago or 10 years ago. And to know that your kids are turning out all right.
No, it was very sweet because
That's encouraging for me to hear.
because I would ask my daughter, like periodically, and then finally one day she's like, I do, and it's a she. And so,
Aw.
and I'm glad she did not hesitate, and I'm glad there was no, they talk about coming out and all that. That was just never a thing. She just loves a girl.
that was, and that's like,
I'm happy.
all of these conversations are so important, and that's what makes those things that could be traumatic, like coming out or realizing you're attracted to someone of the same gender or things like that. It's working really hard to make those things not traumatic. And my oldest, when they were first, they realized, at the very least, they knew they were queer. And the way they came out to us was my husband made a dick joke, and my oldest went, ew, that's disgusting. This is why I like girls, and stormed away. And then my husband looked at me and went, wait, did they just tell us something?
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh yeah, I think that was important. But it just means that everything is okay relationship wise with the kids, whatever they're experiencing.
They feel safe.
And this just went like so far off the rails
I know.
from the Duggars, but it's a good conversation because
Sorry.
oh no, I don't think there's anything to be sorry for, because I find it so much more valuable to use the Duggars and their flaws and their mistakes as a jumping off point for talking about something constructive.
Yeah.
Like, I don't find it useful to look at the Duggars and point and laugh and go, ew, they're weird. They had scandals. Josh is a bad person. Like, that's just entertainment. And when you take it deeper into these conversations of, here's how I'm raising my kid to not be repressed the way that their kids were. Here's how I'm raising my kid to be empowered in rough situations. Here's how I'm raising my kid to be resilient. Here's things that I've learned about myself coming out of that kind of oppressive environment. You take it beyond the point and laugh of, oh wow, these people are weird, and it becomes something really beautiful, that it becomes about our own personal growth, our own journeys through parenthood.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm always trying to do with Duggar stuff.
I love that.
There's nothing wrong with being entertained, but I like to make it that next level.
Yeah.
I really love that.
Well, I don't think I have much else. Joy, do you?
No, and I feel bad, Gavi. Like, we're having this whole kid talk, and you're getting ready for a wedding, so that's exciting for you. I
Yeah.
hope it goes wonderful.
It's going to be good.
that's awesome.
August
Yes.
of 26.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time to do this with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, this really, really means a lot to us. We're teeny tiny. We're just trying to start doing this, and we've been loving the content creation, and we're excited if it goes anywhere. So just having some pros hang out with us is really, really great. So thank you so much.
Nice to have good role models.
Well, thank you so
Thank you.
much for having us.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Please comment, like, and subscribe. You can also check out our podcast, Fixate Today, Gone Tomorrow, for more content. Have anything you'd like us to fixate on? Reach out and let us know. Thanks for joining us. Disclaimer: we are not investigators, journalists, detectives, law enforcement, or historians. We are two neurodivergent ladies who just hyperfixate. Please do not take our opinions and ideas as statements of fact. All allegations are just that. We are not accusing anyone of anything, simply offering our interpretation of what we've researched.